grows out of an acknowledgement of our interdependence and shared humanity. By addressing the challenges that emerge from structural racism, we are working to influence regarding racial equity and social justice in the areas of education, discriminatory policing, gun violence, healthcare, voting rights, and economic justice with competitive wages. He worked alongside the City of Charleston to create the Slavery Apology Resolution. Is the first step towards addressing these challenges. Later this summer, we will resume our work with Dr. Gail Christopher and her Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Framework, and offer our council and other community members opportunity to be trained in this framework. As of note, Dr. Christopher's work has been raised to a national level as Congressman Barbara Lee of California unveiled legislation earlier this month calling for the establishment of the first United States Commission on Racial Healing and Transformation. Our website will be updated and placed on the screen at the end of the night, where you can learn more about the work of the SJREC. A word about why we're holding Living Your Truth. Dialogues with those on the front lines who bravely live the truth of their heart. I hope their words educate us, challenge us, and bring new understanding for all of us as we work together for the dignity and rights of all people. This is the 13th forum in our series of Living Your Truth, which began in May of 2017. To over 1,200 participants, and we thank you tonight for joining us. We are equally excited to have our first youth edition of Living Your Truth with two remarkable young women who represent this movement that we have witnessed over the last few months, Maya Green and Courtenay White. As a 2020 graduate of the Charleston County School of the Arts, where she was a creative writing major and served as the 2019-2020 student count per school. A National Merit Scholarship recipient, she boasted a 4.0 GPA while volunteering for the Charleston Area Justice Ministries, a SheStrong program, and Student Voices inaugural group of journalism fellows. She is also an accomplished speaker, delivering an astounding standing ovation speech for the students and community members at the 2020 MLK Leadership Breakfast sponsored by Charleston YWCA. And she was also a recent speaker at the Charleston County Bar's Lawyers for Justice rally in downtown Charleston. She will be attending Stanford University in the fall and plans to major in political science. Equally vibrant is a 2020 graduate of Porter-Gaud School. She is the founder and the creator of SheStrong, a program formerly sponsored by the Center for Women and now hosted and supported by the YWCA. An avid actress and singer, Courtenay has shared and performed in several plays and musicals, Mater, where she was also active in student. Courtenay's talents and drove her to spend her final semester during her senior year in Washington, D.C., where she will be attending Georgetown University. Courtenay has been a student leader through high school and recruited her friends to participate in the SheStrong program, now in its fourth year. They represent the resilient class of 2020, and we look forward to hearing from your shared experiences and insight, lived experiences about your involvement in social justice and racial equity. Our conversation this evening will be moderated by my colleague and friend, Mrs. LaVonda Brown. LaVonda is currently serving as the Executive Director of the YWCA. LaVonda Brown's 25-plus year career includes on-the-ground experience in social services served populations. She has led and advised several nonprofit and for-profit organizations of Greater Savannah, Gang Alternatives of Miami, Florida, and Clark's Community Services in New Orleans, Louisiana. a passionate advocate for causes including the promotion of gender equality and diversity and helping under-resourced teens and homeless populations. She envisions a world where differences are not just tolerated, but they are celebrated. The YWCA of Greater Charleston is a vital partner to the work of the SJREC, where LaVonda serves on the steering committee, and the Y serves as the local convener of the nationally renowned Racial Equity Institute and also SheStrong. Joining of Greater Charleston in February 2016 has brought LaVonda full circle as her very job, paid job, was as a junior lifeguard and camp leader at the YWCA of Savannah, Georgia. So thank you, LaVonda, for agreeing to moderate for us tonight. We also want Gaud, who is hosting some of our panelists this evening, as well as work to promote this conversation. So now you are invited to lean in, to listen deeply, to open your heart, and reflect with us as Maya and Courtenay speak personally and passionately about their involvement in our community for social justice and racial equity.
Thank you all. Thanks to everyone who's joined in. I am certainly privileged and honored to serve as the executive director of the YWCA, where our mission to eliminate racism. And particular topic to my heart, but I will say that these two particular young women are also very near and dear to my heart. I have really gotten acquainted with them since we inherited SheStrong from the Center for Women, an organization that we hated to see dissolve, but we were more than happy to absorb their program so that the work of empowering women would continue, and had no ladies and the other women, young women of SheStrong to impact, but also on the YWCA. It's incredible to watch the way they work, and that's literally what I do. I watch them work. It is incredible to hear their conversations and to hear their passion. So I'm honored to be able to facilitate the process of you guys being able to hear and just the incredible nature that these young women are bringing to the social justice arena. So thank you, Courtenay, for agreeing to allow us to hear voices. It's important that your voices are heard, and I think that the SJREC is doing a fantastic job making sure that all voices are heard and young voices are important. So thank you both for joining us. So I'll just, let's see, I think we have a slide for some tips for the webinar. I know that, yeah, there we go. So I want those of you who are joining us to understand that your cameras aren't broken. The panelists will be the only ones that are visible on tonight. Your chat feature has been disabled, but there will be time for question and answers toward the end of the conversation. So please use, you'll see at the bottom of your screen a Q&A portion, and so you will be able to ask your questions and we will get through the conversation. We want to make sure we have enough time to hear what these young women have to say, but we also want you to be able to ask important questions that we may have missed that will also shed some light on their thoughts and their ideas about social justice and racial equity. So we will get started. So both of you young women, your bios say that you are co-founders of the SheStrong program. And so you tell us a little bit about what SheStrong is and some of the goals that and the activities that you'll participate in as a part of SheStrong. Courtenay, do you want to start?
I can definitely do that, and thank you all so much for having us. So, you know, the core tenets of the SheStrong are to connect young women in the Charleston community, help them discover their passions, and to help them inspire change in the broader community. I think that the program has certainly evolved to suit the need of young women over the years, driven by the vision of council members. And so we sort of have the programming split into two different sections. There's sort of the more formalized events, and we have our sort of fun community building events. So our big kahuna, you could say, is the big fall leadership summit, where we have women from the community, business leaders, philanthropists, activists coming together to really teach young women, about the movement and about how they can get involved, equip them with the tools they need to advocate for themselves. Then we have other sort of smaller year-round events, a little bit more spontaneous. Is our feminist movie night, where we'll choose a film or a particular TV show, and we'll screen it at one of our, anyone is welcome to come, and then afterwards we'll have a discussion about the themes of the film. So those are some of the programming events that we have sort of evolved over the years.
Yes, definitely. And it's been such a pleasure and joy to see SheStrong grow. I'll let Courtenay kind of walk through the inception of the program, but definitely just wanting to foster a space in Charleston for young women to grow to trust in their skills, to hone their voices, and to speak their minds on issues that pertain to them, and definitely social justice and equity in a larger sense. So Courtenay, do you want to kind of describe SheStrong's creation?
Sure thing. So all of our 8th grade dreams and aspirations. I remember I was just sort of getting into social justice and activism at the time. And I had just learned what it meant to read an article about something, educate yourself. And I remember I was at lunch, we were at a table, and I was having a very heated conversation with a young man who was insisting vehemently that the only reason that the gender pay gap existed was because women were always off having babies. And I knew this was not correct. And so mad, I went home and I said, "Mom, can you believe what this boy said? Can you not believe in the gender pay gap?" And of course, my understanding of the gender pay gap at this point was very, very basic, right? I knew nothing about how it broke down on the lines of race or sexual identity, but nevertheless, I had to find a way to educate my community about this issue, because I realized that a lot of people were misinformed, myself included. So at the time, I reached out to the director of the former Center for Women, Amy Brennan, lovely person, just one of the best out there, and a true civil servant. And she came to speak at our school about the wage, and we got to talking. And a few months later, she asked if I would come help her build a coalition of young women from the community who might be interested in starting a youth branch of the Center for Women, which ended up being SheStrong. And immediately when she said we were building a team, I knew that the first person I wanted in my corner was Maya Green, friends for life since 3rd grade, and just one of truly the best activists that I know, regardless of age. So that's our little story.
And it's grown so much since then. We didn't sit down and say, okay, well, a program called SheStrong, and this is what we'll do. No, we just saw a need in the community. Courtenay saw a need in the community and brought me in. And I'm so thankful that I've had the privilege of knowing her and knowing someone who not only acknowledges problems, but then seeks to solve them, which I think is super important for youth to do and to feel.
Well, awesome, ladies. Well, thank you. Tell us a little bit what you feel of the young voice. What is a person's role towards social justice and racial equity? You all are our future, but you're also our right now. And we're hearing and seeing your voices being elevated even more and more. So what do you feel the role for young people today?
Well, I think, and this is very evident today, but I think even historically, looking at every kind of surge of social change or social movement in this country and across the world, people weren't leading it. There was definitely a significant branch of the movement that was led and fostered by young people. And so I think, along the lines of young people being the future, there's been this quote that I've seen passed around on Instagram a lot lately in the context of, racial equity in this national conversation that's come. And I'm paraphrasing the lines of, like, it is every person's role to become the society they were raised in. And I think that is definitely just a phenomenon that I've seen a lot of young people embrace, just awareness that as we grow to inherit the world, we're directly responsible for how that world should treat people and how we should treat each other. And so I think that energy has really led a lot of young people included to not wait for a later day to pursue change, but to start right now.
And speaking of right now, I know that we've all seen so much of the protests and civil unrest and just the real outrage and outcry of the country to the recent murders of unarmed people of color, Black people, and even just really recently, close to home with Rayshard Brooks in Atlanta. So tell me, why do you think young people, we've seen that many of the protesters are millennials, and what's going on with the young people right now? What's in your minds? What's causing you all to respond and right now?
Well, I think young people, I know speaking solely for myself, have kind of grown up raped by police and in some cases vigilance against Black people, and then seeing kind of the public outcry, and then the next news cycle occurring, but all too soon it's back with another person, another life taken. And again, speaking for myself, I think George Floyd was a breaking point. Just an exhaustion of this occurring so often, and yet, and a kind of issue was systemic, that it wasn't just individuals at apples, but the fact that it does occur so often is, all the proof needed to show that this is the systemic issue, and yet we weren't really witnessing any sort of systemic change. And so I know the week after George Floyd's murder was the angriest I've ever been. And I remember being young and, seeing Trayvon Martin's trial, and seeing, if we're, looking more locally, seeing, the shooting of Walter Scott, seeing the Emanuel 9 massacre, and then just a moving on, it felt like acknowledgement of the changes that need. And so I know that's been an impetus for me, and I can assume other young people to kind of say, no, we're not moving on from this. This isn't a headline. This is a ultra real reality based in history and in pervasive in all areas of life, educator, etc. And we need to address it. And so that's definitely been my motive.
Courtney, do you have anything to add to that?
You put it so well that I'm going to leave it there. There's nothing that I could add to make that better, and I share those feelings.
Well, you both met at Porter-Gaud, and your friendship and your partnership has blocked years, and I've been personally witnessing how you've been intentional on diversity and differences. So tell us about, share your thoughts on in the classroom and why you feel that's important.
Sure, I can start us off on this one. So I think it's something that I started to see towards the end of it's almost like a diversity, right? Because any good institution knows that diversity is something that needs to happen, I think that we've all just become so accustomed to this idea as sort of like a background hum that we sort of stopped talking somewhere along the way about the why and how we are hurting our communities by not embracing diverse schooling. And an example that I sometimes like to use is if you are a person of color living in a neighborhood that's being gentrified and you are being exploited by your landlord so that like a trendy coffee house can be put up, that's a bad system. And we need people in government and in activism to help us start solving that problem. By not allowing people who have real experience with that problem to receive the same level of education, you are depriving the world of the change makers and of the people who are apt to actually solve an issue based off of that experience and knowledge of the nuance of those problems. And so I think it's something that Maya and I have sort of been talking about lately, is that it's not necessarily about like educating the white people. It's not all that it's about. It's about giving equal opportunity to all people.
Anything to add to that, Maya?
I mean, I think that's spot on and a really great understanding that like diversity work isn't necessarily but it is mutually beneficial to, you know, the people who have been historically marginalized and people who have been historically privileged, that in understanding each other and having important dialogues like this, the world is a better place and we're all better for it. And so, yes, definitely there's societal value in diversity. It's a no-brainer.
Absolutely. I preach the same thing all the time. And it's so, it really warms my heart to see you two and others like you that are already having diverse friendship groups and that you're being intentional about that. I've even seen that through SheStrong. You know, sometimes I talk to older adults and we're just talking to them about reaching across the aisle and being, you know, opening your friendship circle. So I think really take an example from you and your peers on being intentional about personal diversity, and it really does help change the narrative. So thank you for your consciousness. So Maya, you are not only involved in SheStrong as it comes to being a social justice advocate, but you also have been involved with the Charleston Area Justice Ministry, as we know as KJM. Tell us your experience with that and how you got involved with KJM at such a young age.
Yes. So maybe I have a pattern of, you know, with friends, kind of getting caught up in like an issue we need to solve. With Courtney, it was kind of empowerment and advocacy, and we SheStrong. Well, my sophomore year of high school, me and my friend River Abdon, who's like a person, we started the activist movement at where we went to high school. It was a short-lived club. It, you know, started with these great grand ideas. I think we like baked treats for our club day table and, you know, making real change, whatever that meant. And it quickly kind of devolved into us and like 10 people like gathering in our English teacher's classroom and then just kind of sitting at each other about how wrong, we need to make change, but it was very much an echo chamber. So luckily, an older student at our school kind of noticed our passions and redirected us a little bit and invited us to become involved with GEM, or the Charleston Area Justice Ministry, which is a diverse network of various religious and racial backgrounds that band together, research community injustice, search best practices and policies, and then encourage elected officials to implement those policies. And I found that work very well. I'm still a proud team member and team leader within K, and they're just doing awesome work in the community.
Awesome, that's fantastic. So, Courtney, you have had in spending some time in Washington, D.C. in your junior year. Tell us a little bit about that and what that contrast was or wasn't as it relates to the time that you spent here in Charleston.
Yeah, so the School for Ethics and Global Leadership is just a really fantastic program that brings 24 students from all around the country together to meet with community lead journalists, activists, to really just discuss the problems of the present and the future with just like anything on the table. One of the really special things about Siegel is that it is there in the city. We live right off of A Street behind. So every single night when I was studying in our study room, I could see into little clerks' offices and see people scurrying around, and it was very inspiring. Made me want to do my work and study hard. But one of the things that's wanted to emphasize while we were there is that that's just one side of the city. Washington, D.C. is one of the most diverse cities in the United States, and it also has a lot of problems. And so they took us for an entire, a quick bus ride from our dorms. They took us to a fundraiser that a Siegel grad was putting on because she had commissioned this beautiful the lives of Black men and women whose lives were lost at the hands of terrible police in their community. And I don't think that they wanted us to have this sort of rose-colored glasses understanding of DC, because it's really easy when you're living in the capital to see all the beautiful marble buildings and everything's perfect, because it just wasn't. And I think that that's something that we still struggle in Charleston, is to understand the broader picture, because when people come to Charleston, they see all of the beautiful colonial buildings and they shop on King Street. But, as we all know, we have we still need to be solving there, and that we cannot allow to sort of look at things with our nostalgia glasses on.
Thank you for sharing that. You both have been very personally invested in seeing some changes that you've attended. And I know, Maya, you personally advocated for further racial and socioeconomic at your alma mater, the Charleston School of the Arts. Tell us why that was important to you, and what changes you would like to see at your former campus.
Yes. So I have since 7th grade been, or I guess, but I was a creative writing student at Charleston County School of the Arts, recently graduated, had an amazing time. The creative writing program, incredible. I have nothing but good things to say about it. But definitely the school struggled with, I guess, reflecting the community that surrounded it. And I found, in writing about the lack of diversity I was seeing in my classrooms, that, we've talked about kind of the societal and personal benefits of diversity, but I saw kind of a historical benefit of diversity, or kind of a historical need to have a diverse student body, in that Charleston County School of the Arts is located on the Bonds-Wilson campus, along with Academic Magnet High School, which is another high-performing with abysmal diversity. And Bonds-Wilson campus was previously occupied by Bonds-Wilson High School, which was a historically built. Upon integration, the school was shut down, and then the integrated North Charleston High School was opened. And then decades later, SOA and Magnet then occupied the campus. And so it's placed in the historically Black Liberty Hill neighborhood. There was just a lot of reasons that, historical reasons that it should be serving the community more faithfully. And it was years in auditioning, because there is just not equal access to arts education. It depends so heavily on where you went to elementary school and how well funded your school was, and if your parents could afford private lessons. or private. So I first addressed the problem in writing about it because, as a creative writer, that's kind of what I was taught to do, how I was taught to approach problem solving. And then as student body president my senior year, I led some outreach to North Charleston Elementary School, which is like 5 minutes down the road, and did some work with the fifth graders there on why they should audition and how they could go about doing that. So it's just the beginning of a lot of work that needs to be done. But I think it's important there to acknowledge the history, and it's shared history with a lot of institutions in Charleston.
What would you like to see the future of that look like? What would the appropriate recognizing that history?
Well, I mean, I was always taught in creative writing that storytelling is a tool for social change, and I think it's easy to see that art has played that role in a lot of ways throughout history, whether that's, civil rights movement anthems or, Guernica, the painting Pablo Picasso in the Spanish Civil War. It's just art historically has been very important in addressing a society's issues, especially with equity. And so I think such an artistic I would love to see it become more diverse, and then I would love to see some focus on how the artistic skills that students learn there can be used to better the community and raise awareness of the issues that affect the student body.
Awesome. Well, I hope who can make those changes is listening right now. Courtney, your alma mater, I was going to say your school, but you both have graduated now. Your alma mater, Porter-Gaud, has been featured in the Post-Courier recently about alums have been trying to do to address the diversity at Porter-Gaud, your alma mater. What do you have to say about that? What do you think about that? What was done well? What adjustments or changes could still?
Yeah. Porter-Gaud is a great place, and I'm very, very lucky to have spent 13 years there. But I can understand how difficult for a school with so much historical baggage, right, to diversify a private school in an area that has egregiously disenfranchised Black and brown people throughout the years. And I think that with the diversity that we do have, the school has always done a fantastic job of lifting, of trying to address problems that have arisen. But I think that one of the side products of that is that when you are the only person of color in a room, there is sort of an element of tokenism that comes into play. You will, if you are in your English class and you're the only Black person there and you're reading Huck Finn, right, and you're having that really difficult discussion about a very controversial book, you will have to, in that moment, speak out for your entire racial or ethnic group. Just speaking from my own experience, I do not think that I am at all a qualified advocate for the Asian American community. I am second gen. The problems that my mom faced coming to this country, the xenophobia that her family faced, which is still very real today, that I cannot speak to firsthand. And so really the only way that I think that fix this problem going forward and not make people feel singled out in this fight for equity is to increase student diversity so that we have multiple different representatives of these groups, right, who can form a strong coalition. And ask, how do we do that? And so one of the major problems, I think, is a lack of diverse faculty. And I think that this is true across the board in Charleston, especially.
I've never had a Black teacher. Just as a student who's spent time in public and private school, I've never had a Black teacher.
Yeah, the first time that I ever had a teacher of color was at Siegel, and I would talk to my peers there, and they would all say, it's astounding to have someone in the classroom, an academic mentor who looks like me, who understands my problems, and when I make a point in the classroom can say, yes, I hear that, I can back you up on that. And I think that's one of the most important things that we can be doing. to support her.
Awesome. Now, Maya, you had an experience when you were at Boost Academy, and you wrote about it in your book that is, we'll do a little commercial break here, available on Amazon for only $12. So your tell book, give us your plug, but want to hear the experience that you wrote about and just how you processed that and how that made you feel.
Yes. Well, thank you for the plug. Yes, my book, Origin Hungry, for $12. All creative writing majors at School of the Arts are tasked with writing senior year and publishing at least of those. And I ended up writing a book of poems and essays entitled that kind of, I began with wanting to kind of examine my identity and who I felt I was kind of on this brink of childhood and adulthood. But in kind of reflecting on what it is that makes me, I ended up going a lot into family stories, and I embarked on a lot of interviews. I ended up looking at kind of what it meant to be a Black person to me, but then also historically. And, you know, my paternal grandparents were immigrants from Barbados, and then my maternal grandparents were born descendants of slaves in Louisiana and grew up during Jim Crow Louisiana. So I felt like I had these kind of two dual experiences meant to be Black in America. And it was really interesting kind of digging into that history and figuring out where I fit in it. But to get back to racial equity and specifically diversity in the classroom, I attended Boost Academy, kindergarten through second grade, and at Porter-Gaud and at SOA. A particular essay in my book called A Personal History of Blackness. And to talk about that one interaction at Boost Academy, a girl was organizing a game on the playground in, I believe, first grade, and told me that I couldn't play because my skin was different. And then I told my mom or a teacher, both carted to the guidance counselor. I can't remember the entire lecture or conversation we had, but the end result of it was that the girl was instructed to hug me whenever she saw me in the hallways, just to, I guess, show that, Black people are deserving of friendship. I don't really know what the lesson was for her, and I especially don't know what the lesson was for me. I felt, upon reflection, I felt very much like I was a prop for her kind of instruction on, look at this Black person, she's deserving of kindness, but I didn't really know what I had to get out of the interaction. And upon, the introspection kind of necessary to write about that, and about my other experiences being what I call the only in a classroom, it's really just a symptom of a much larger problem of, and speaks to the value of that when children aren't exposed to the world and the demographics of the world, then they don't to interact with people who are different than them. And it was very hard kind of reckoning with my identity when I wasn't surrounded by, for the most part, classmates that looked like me or teachers that looked like me, and a kind of a reckoning I've had to deal with kind of coming into my own.
Yeah, sure. And Maya, before we get off of the topic of this story, which is, I just wanted to tell you that when I read that essay in your book, it kind of was like an oh my gosh aha moment, because I thought back to how we first met and sort of the moment when we first became friends, because we were in the same third grade. We had just gotten out of the playground and I wanted to play tag, and so I tagged Maya to tag, you're it, and ran away, right? And I'm running, I look back and I see is very upset And I go back and I'm like, what's wrong? What's going on? And she's like, why are you running away from me? I think that we both started to cry. You were crying because you thought that I was running away from you, that I was like excluding you from the game. And I was crying because I was like, no, I just wanted to play tag and have a new friend. And so we're both sitting there crying on the playground, and the teacher comes and tries to smooth things over. And after that, it was gravy. But
no, after that, it was history. I never even thought about that interaction in the context of like possible playground trauma I had, but I'm glad that it worked out the way it did.
Thank you for that, because I actually was going to ask you both, and I'll still ask the question, and maybe you can go further down that that train of thought. Friendship, and I like to call it a friendship and a partnership, because you all are not just friends, but you're actually partners in a movement for young people, and particularly young women. Our friendship just shaped how your attitudes and your views of the world and of diversity and inclusion, and how you bring that to SheStrong. So how has your friendship shaped the way that you interact and do things outside of your?
Sure. So, I mean, I think that Maya is this already, but I know for a fact that the friendship that I have with Maya was one of the first, I think, truly adult friendships that I was ever able to cultivate, because we didn't go to the same school we only went to the same school for a few years. And then we were living in different places and seeing different people, but every single time that we got together, it was like we were gabbing nonstop late into the night, like no time had passed. And I think that being able to have someone in your life that you can constantly have as a sounding board and have those deep late night conversations with, it really helps you hone your ideas. I remember one time we were in the car, and Maya was the first person to ever teach me about what intersectionality meant. How can you be a good feminist in the 21st century without having an understanding of intersectionality? You can't.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've learned a lot from each other throughout the years. Explain what intersectionality is to anyone who doesn't know, but just kind of an acknowledgement that when you're addressing the struggles of a particular group, in this case women, you have to acknowledge the intersections of their other identities. And so it's impossible to kind of champion women's rights without acknowledging that race plays a factor. And so like the struggles of a Black woman or a Latino woman are not necessarily universal, or likewise with class. And so I think that's just one example of the kind of ways we've taught each other throughout the years. I think we're lucky in that we met at like 8 years old and just have kind of grown in similar directions. I feel like we've like bonded throughout the years over different things. So like when it was Harry Potter, when we got older, like we were both really into the cast Pod Save America. So just kind of lucky to have a person who happens to just like fit with you really well throughout the years. And as we've like grown and changed, I think that's definitely rare and definitely something I appreciate. And one thing I kind of look for going into the world, someone who not only like shares your values, but is willing to teach you and learn from you, and fun things with you, but also talk about why we have to change the world with you.
Well, speaking of changing the world, I'm listening to you both, and I am truly inspired. I'm always, even as I witness you both manage through SheStrong and bringing that opportunity to the next generation of young women, of high school girls. I'm just amazed at your character and your passion, and so it just makes me wonder, like, where does this come from? Where were you? Is it genetic? Was there a teacher? Was there, a pastor? Where does this come from? How did you get this activism gene and get, and wanting to make a difference and change the world? Because that's exactly what you're doing. So where does it come from? Courtney, you?
Sure. Off. I mean, I know my mom was a huge factor in my sort of becoming more aware of the world around me. She's a pulmonologist and a critical care physician, and so she's on the academic right now, just truly my hero and everyone's hero now. But she wouldn't really hide me just because I'm young. Like she would come home and she would tell me an incident at work, right, where there's some tall resident man, usually white, who hailing her and for the day, and him for medical advice, when really she has to keep saying, no, I'm the professional here, 20 plus years of experience. Yes, this small Asian woman, this tall white man. And I think that having those conversations early on, reading a lot, as I know that Maya and I both did as children, I think those were two things that really put me in a mindset to be challenged.
I would agree with that. Definitely, like my parents, and seeing their work in the community growing on. When I was really young, my mom was on the Charleston County School board, and so and then like my dad's been involved with kind of political causes in Charleston in our life as well, and definitely just kind of growing up with the like understanding that like contribution not even necessarily was like expected, but was just like the way, like the role of like the citizen, to not just put your hand and grind, but to also try to make the world around you better, and try to make the communities and spaces you occupied better. So definitely super inspired by my parents. Also, like Courtney said, reading a lot. I think kind of was like kind of an early. I was really shy, and so got super into like the world of books, and I think in reading a lot was kind of exposed to like this idea of like a world beyond myself or greater than myself. Yeah, my grandparents, just all of my family, just like super honored and inspired by the sacrifices they've made, and yeah, my friendships, my education, definitely my creative writing program. I think the curriculum of that program is very intentional, and I always felt, and I think this is kind of a larger lesson on what curriculum should look like, but I always felt like my cultural background and my identity was not only like a worthy thing to be taught about, discussed, but also like necessary, and that my identity and my history and all of that was like super significant to not only like the work that I produced in that classroom, but like the lessons I learned. So yeah, definitely a myriad of factors.
Well, it sounds like you both have had a myriad of experience that you've taken those in. But I'd certainly say that you're doing all, particularly your parents, who have so into you, and now you're pouring into others, and so that is how it's the world. So thank you for doing that. So we are going to save time for questions from the audience, but I do want to just ask you one last question, and maybe this will prompt some questions from those who are tuning in. And that is, what can we do? Those of us who are quote unquote at the helm, because I won't, because you are adults now, and you are very involved and very engaged, taking the charge. But what can those of us are at the helm right now, what can we do differently or better to bring about true racial equity and social justice?
I can start with that. I attended summer camp as a kid and kind of teen, and in doing like that kind of sleepaway summer camp camping thing, we were always taught when we like entered an outdoor space that we had to leave it, and leave no trace kind of be respectful of the space you occupy. And I think lessons can definitely be drawn by that racial equity is not like a box on the checklist, on a checklist that, you know, you'll accomplish one day, or, you know, it can be a side hustle. It has to be integral to everything you, and it just has to be a framework, a way you look at the world. And so I would just urge everyone to question the ways in which, even if not directly responsible, they're complicit in systems that don't serve everyone equally, and kind of view their skills and their stories, because I truly believe everyone has something to offer, and kind of assess what it is that they feel like their strengths are and how they can contribute to, you know, increasing understand, kind of just reimagining the world, and not being limited by something because we've always done things, or just because it's historically been the path.
To sort of bounce off of what I was saying, I think that we need to have a sense of urgency comes to leveling the playing field in our schools, because every single year that to make progress on that, we are losing out, like I said earlier, on the people who are actually going to be able to solve these problems. And maybe it's me, and maybe it's Maya, and maybe it's someone who is being lost right now, and we'll never know. And so we should feel that racial equity is incredibly urgent, and not just something that needs to happen slowly and over time.
Well, thank you, ladies. So we have some questions and comments from the Q&A.
Lavonda, I think you might have accidentally.
Sorry, yes. Thank you both for your candor, for your openness, for really sharing with us your heart and your thoughts, and giving us some insight into how we can do better and how we can include your voices in. So we do have some questions and some comments. I think I was on mute when I said that earlier. We do have some questions and comments from those who are viewing. So I'm going to go and read those. Thank you so much for speaking tonight. Very inspirational. I totally agree. Given the recent attention Porter-Gaud and Ashley Hall received in the Post-Courier regarding alumni requests for increased diversity, equity, and inclusion work, I am wondering what responsibilities you think private institutions have to the city, and how about implementing solutions? Either one of you can answer that.
I can take this one, or at least start off. You know, I think that it's important to acknowledge institutions like Ashley Hall and Porter-Gaud. They have such historical ties in the community, which means that they have been complicit over the years in propping up institutional racism at every step of the way. And I think that in order to make reparations for those years, it is of critical importance that the schools now reflect the broader community. It's the least that we can do. And I know that the private schools in Charleston are taking the steps to do that, but I think that everyone knows there's definitely more to do in the future.
Yeah, I guess I'll add to that. I know Courtney has a little more experience in private schools than I do, and I think her answer kind of addresses that really well. I think that there can be like kind of nuances, I guess, maybe in like private versus public, like as a private institution, what do they really owe to the community? But I think that it's important to realize, like, first and foremost, before you get into the nuances of private, public, charter, magnet, that as educational institutions, there's just a duty there to kind of educate and do that honestly and inclusively, because what value is education if everyone doesn't have access to it, if it excludes people as one of its core tenets? And so I think that there's definitely been important conversation, and the alumni leaders are just so inspiring to me in kind of addressing what those schools could do better.
So in keeping with that, Maya, there's a question specifically, or a comment and possibly a question. Maya indicates that an inability to access quality education at an early age can disenfranchise students later on as they try to accelerate their education. School choice and vouchers seem to be the obvious solution. Why are some on education being tied to their zip code? It would seem that this generationally traps low-income students in poorly functioning schools. Why not let them go where they want?
Yeah, well, I won't pretend to be an expert, I guess, on the nuances of school choice. And I know as an attendee of a magnet school, I've benefited from school choice. But kind of focusing more like idealistically and big picture, I kind of question the long-term logic of that. I think the question I would have is, why are there poorly functioning schools in the first place, and how can we fix those schools, rather than how can we send students to schools that are functioning? Because I mean, every school that's open has to be attended by someone, otherwise the school would close. And I think everyone deserves a code that educates them, that prepares them for the rest of their life, whatever that looks like. And I would hesitate making the solution, let's just send people to like whatever they want to go to, because I think that's a good way for some schools to be overcrowded, some schools to be undercrowded, and then I think it's just not very long term. But like I said, I'm no expert. A variety of solutions have to be proposed to like find the one that works.
Absolutely, thank you. What advice would you give young girls who are in terms of race, ethnicity, heritage, social status in school?
I can start with that one too. I think to, I guess, have the courage to kind of make your own space as needed. I would want them to know that they're deserving of a space that sees them for who they are and serves their identity entirety. And I think definitely I've been lucky to encounter spaces like my creative writing program, feel like see me as a whole and then celebrate me as a whole. And then I've also in certain situations create space where I didn't see it. And so I would just encourage young girls who feel like they're the only, that, their differences don't make them lesser. They are something to be celebrated. They are giving them a story to share and experience to make change, and that space, you should create it.
Awesome, thank you. Any suggestions on how to address the low number of people in your age group registered to vote in a time when there are no large? How can they be reached?
I don't know, Courtney, feel free to hop in with what your thoughts are on that. I would say maybe the internet. A lot of young people spend a lot of time on the internet, and I know, like, I registered to vote the morning as I'd gotten told on Instagram so many times that it was very crucial to vote as soon as you were able. And I just kind of knew as I eligible that it was something I had to do. I stood in so many lines with my parents throughout the years, and so it was always kind of my understanding that I had to vote. I think that it can be hard to reach people who feel like their vote doesn't matter, or that who have been historically ongoing diligence to reaching out to those people in those communities. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree with all of that. I think that this is perhaps more of a utilitarian answer, but gosh, teach your kids their social security number. Make sure that because I know that there are so many great organizations in the Charleston area that our school voting registry fairs, like it'll be set up outside everything, and if you have your social, then you can do it like right then and there, and it takes no time at all, and you don't even have to look it up yourself. And I know that I saw at my own school, like a lot of kids being like, oh, well, I'd love to register right now, but like, I gotta call my mom, I don't know my social security number. So that's a great and easy step that I think would actually help on the ground with youth voter registration.
Well, thank you. Another question, if you could give one gift to youth in Charleston, what would it be?
I think that would definitely vary based off of the individual youth. I would say like space that they feel fosters like their passion, whatever that is. And I know that like I've definitely benefited from just having space in my adolescence to kind of explore the things that I felt like I was good at. And I think that fosters like a lot of confidence going into the college application process or going to the workforce, feeling like you have something to contribute that you've like actively developed. And I think that can be a failing of schools a lot of the time. So they're so stiff to the point where there's not really wiggle room for students. Well, this is something I uniquely am good at. Let me like develop that. So maybe that's a gift I'd give to youth in Charleston.
Yeah.
Anything to add to that?
I mean, I would encourage young people to try to find a niche outside of your school as well as in it. And I know that Maya has done this wonderfully, and I've tried to do this as well, because I think that because we're still living in a community where our schools are so segregated, at times, at least for now, it's important to reach out and the communities where you can learn and be and just sort of educate yourself about what the broader Charleston community looks like outside of your bubble.
We have a comment. Thank you for your leadership. As a teacher in Charleston, I appreciate your willingness to guide adults and young people alike.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. I know sometimes I feel like a bit of a fraud sitting here, right? Because I still feel like a kid, and I, just because I have opinions, I don't always know if they're worth sharing. But I appreciate this discussion with a dear friend.
Absolutely, it's great. It's great for us to hear what you're thinking and what you need. Another question, how do you as young adults find accurate information? My daughter spends a lot of time on Instagram, and I have concerns of the accuracy she gets from this platform. As an older adult, I too struggle with what to believe, turning now to local news and the paper.
Yeah, this is a great one. Local newspapers are in jeopardy. I mean, we're lucky in Charleston to have the Post and Courier, which is of course Pulitzer Prize winning. But the majority of breaking stories, are first published, and so it's really important if you're subscribed to your local paper to do so. For young people, I mean, Maya, we were talking about this earlier, but podcasts are awesome, especially if you have a kid who's driving to school every 30 minutes to kill. Perfect. Just put that on in the background. I also would recommend the New York Times Daily Briefing. It's basically like just a shot of news every morning, and it's accurate and it's concise, and it's sort of everything that you need to know from day to day.
Yeah, I would say all of that. I really like podcasts. I think it's like hard to kind of trust the news. I mean, you hear like fake news a lot, and it's you don't want to believe everything you hear, especially online where it's not necessarily like vetted in a newsroom, but it's just like someone's opinion. I think hearing people's opinions is not necessarily dangerous as long as your child or yourself recognizes that it is an opinion. And so that's something I've kind of like, in feeling like a lot of the news I was getting was pretty biased as I've grown up, just kind of to recognize that bias, and that doesn't necessarily invalidate what the person is saying, but just that it is one perspective. I definitely feel on Instagram, where there's like kind of a lot of social media, I've like encountered opinions that I like was previously uneducated about or didn't share. And then I woked or something. I'm like, oh, like I'm so problematic. Like I didn't know that, or I don't agree with that. What's wrong? Like I need to completely reevaluate what it is I think I know. And I think that is the case in some instances, but I think it's also we have like a tendency, if something's in text, to think that it's like more important than it is. And so just kind of realizing that people are going to have opinions and they're going to be online, and there's definitely something to learn from them, but that you don't necessarily have to believe everything you see online.
Thank you. The comments: thoughtful, honest, and well-articulated conversation that didn't avoid hard questions. Thanks for being involved, and best wishes in your future. I do not disagree. For Maya, you emphasized the fact that throughout your academic life, you were all too often the only one. It's wonderful that you're going to matriculate at Stanford U. However, did you consider attending an HBCU, a historically Black college and university?
This is a good question. I did consider attending and applying to an HBCU. I was looking specifically at, I looked specifically in my application process at Spelman and Howard. It just so happened that I attended a summer program at Stanford, like my sophomore year in high school. Ended up applying there early because it was like their early application program was non-restrictive, so I didn't necessarily have to go if I got in. You know, fingers crossed. I was so nervous that it's like I'm very privileged and blessed to have gotten it. It ended up kind of coming down to I got in. I was like in the middle of my senior year and writing a book. And the financial aid worked out, and so I was like, okay, like I'm just gonna go to Stanford. If I had to do it over again, I would probably look more at HBCUs, because I think that experience of just being surrounded by people that your cultural background is so valuable. And I would definitely urge any Black senior applying to college to look seriously at HBCUs. If I end up doing more education beyond Stanford, I'm definitely going to consider.
Awesome. Okay, another question. As someone who also left Charleston for college, I'm wondering how you envision staying engaged in activism, something I'm definitely working on. How do you plan, both of you, how do you plan to stay engaged with activism once you go off to college?
Well, I know that Georgetown has a really is quite well known for having a really robust political student body, and they have just more campus clubs and organizations than you could possibly attend in all of them in one just 4-year run. So there are definitely a few organizations that I have flagged in my notes app, but I'm also looking to, like Maya said, see what niches are still available, see what issues aren't being discussed. I'm thinking of maybe starting a sort of bi-coalition, see where that goes, because I think that those are sometimes the best conversations and really get to the meat of where we're finding friction. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, I guess adding to that, I think will be hard to stay involved with activism work in Charleston, but kind of a side effect of this pandemic is that a lot of activism work occurs online now. And so that's one way to stay kind of plugged in, is to, see where there are Zooms and see where there are, Instagram accounts to follow and etc. I think also the activism work is most effective when it's based on relationships and relationship building. And so a lot of like activism work that I've done in high school has kind of led to like knowing people within certain organizations and stuff. And so I think that makes it connected, or hopefully it will make it easier to stay connected throughout my 4 years of college. because I'll have ties to specific people still doing the work in Charleston, like LaVonda.
Absolutely, definitely. Thank you. So we have 2 more questions because we do want to make sure we have time to wrap up. But I think we have about 2 more questions. So if anyone has submitted a comment that I don't get a chance to read to the ladies, just we will ensure that they get those comments. And we thank you for your support. So next to the last question, how can the Charleston community encourage young people of color to enter the classroom as instructors and educators? And how can our schools support these teachers to enter the educational communities where they are so urgently needed?
Yeah, that's like kind of a hard question, and that like it's probably like very policy, to some extent policy based. I think teachers should be paid a lot more than they currently are. And I think that would encourage, I think it's really rewarding work. At least being a student, I've been so impacted, but so influenced and shaped by my teachers, and I'm so appreciative of all of them. But I can understand how, especially for young students of color, if it's not a financially lucrative or even sometimes livable career decision, it is probably hard to make that choice. So I think, yeah, just supporting teachers financially would probably go a long way. And then also just kind of having those workplace questions that I think everyone's considering right now of like, you know, what barriers might exist within our workplace, but implicit biases, and how can we start to kind of eliminate
or major snaps for everything that Maya said. I think that another thing is changing, you know, the conversation about how we view, you know, middle school, high school, elementary school teachers, because when we talk to our kids about this, you know, how you know you've made it, we list doctor, lawyer, professor, right? And we say these are the most valuable jobs in our society. But you know, the best teacher I ever had was a former college professor who decided that the place where he could do the most good was in high school. I mean, that's where he could really shape next generation and make them confront difficult questions in a smaller environment. And I think that if we start to regard those teachers as the heroes that they are, and really applaud them more, then I think that career path, in addition to, again, paying teachers more because they're criminally underpaid, would make that a more viable career option for people.
All right, ladies, last question. And it's a good question and a good way to end this conversation, because we've talked about some heavy stuff and we've talked about what the situation looks like today. But the question is, what makes you hopeful?
This might be a little bit cheesy, but you know, I think this is a great question. I think that right now it feels like there's so little common ground for us to stand on, and this is a time where rightfully we're all questioning, you know, what it means to be Americans. But when I see, you know, those 7 o'clock 2-minute just applause rounds, right, where we're all able to rally around healthcare workers and people on the front lines in a time of crisis, I mean, that sort of reminds me that we all can still feel that we're a part of something that's worth saving, something that's worth fighting for. And I know that moving forward, that this time will really impact the way that I fight for that better future.
I agree with what Courtney said. Definitely community. But I guess to add to that, I would say that even in like kind of national moment that can be angry and confusing and difficult and tense, I'm grateful and hopeful for that tension, because I think that it's so necessary, and it shows that people care. It shows that people are thinking about ways they can better. thinking about, healing and connection, and is just, I think tension is necessary for justice. And so even when it's not fun in the moment, I'm grateful that we're having discussions like these.
Grateful too. I am grateful that we're having discussions like these. I'm grateful that I get to be a part of discussions like this, and I'm very grateful that the SJR is hosting not only the Living Your Truths that they have been hosting, but that they thought enough to bring you to and bring your voices, elevate them and bring you to the table as partners in this fight towards social justice and racial equity. So I want to thank you both. I want to thank you both for all that you're doing in your respective communities. Now, as you'll see, those of you who are viewing, you'll see contact information for these ladies if you want to get in touch with them, also for the Social Justice Racial Equity Collaborative. But I would just like to say that it has been my honor to facilitate this conversation. I would have witnessed it either way, but I'm certainly honored to have been able to facilitate this, and I look forward to continuing contact with both of you and whatever I can offer you personally or through the YWCA. You know I have your back. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having us. It was really a pleasure.
Yes.
And I will turn it over to Dwayne.
Yes, thank you. Hopefully everyone can hear me. I'm the one who would be technically getting it wrong, so hopefully I'm not on mute. But I want to thank, first of all, Courtenay and Maya for sharing with us what they have, just the insight, their poise, their level of knowledge. I just want to thank you all for being part of this. And I know when I first told Maya, she's like, not again, Dad. But this is something that I think everyone enjoyed. And I want to thank Lavonda and the YWCA for what you all have done, because, but not for the YWCA and your wonderful programs, Maya and Courtenay would not have had the opportunity to work together continuously as they did. There's a lot of other participants that I want to also thank for their support. YWCA, please follow them on Facebook. Please get involved with them. SheStrong is going to continue long after Maya and Courtenay are gone. And I know they'd love nothing more than to come back from graduation and see that the program that they started is still thriving. So a big plug and shout out and thank you to Lavonda and the YWCA. And even another big thank you for Porter-Gaud School. It's not lost on me that because of Porter-Gaud, Maya and Courtenay came together and got to know each other. And I do want to speak and put a plug in for Porter-Gaud as a place where a lot of diversity initiatives are now coming to fruition. It was a great article by Adam Parker in this past weekend's paper. So I just want to give a shout out to the board members of Porter-Gaud who are listening to this. I saw Melvin Brown, I saw DuBose Eggleston, I saw Deidre D. Fortson. I just want to tell all of you, thank you for your ongoing support. Phil Zalby, who was the technical wizard that put all this together and allowed us to get on this webinar. Thanks to him as well. And last but not least, I definitely want to thank Sophia Institute for making this collaboration possible. You see a lot of what they're doing in the community is bringing together collaborators such as CAJM, Porter-Gaud, YWCA, and we have information on how you can follow and support the Sophia Institute. I do want to thank my fellow committee members who are behind the scenes, but Amanda Lawrence, Sandy Morkel, Julie Hussey, Pastor Nelson Rivers, again, Henry Smythe Jr., who was in the newspaper or the bar newsletter with me today. I want to thank all of them for what they're doing to let these conversations happen across the community. And if you love this one, you'll love the ones that we have coming up. You can sign up with the Sophia Institute for our newsletter. And I think we have another slide. I hope I'm not just saying it, either for our website or also for giving levels. And if it's the same slide, then we do not. But in either way, we can go to the Sophia Institute website. If you Google that, we do ask you to follow us and support if you enjoyed. And I think if we go back one slide, it might have, yeah, there we go. The Sophia Institute, if you want to screenshot that. And a couple of questions I've been getting throughout is, has this been recorded? It has been recorded. So I think that we can send the link out, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but anyone who would like a recording of this, we had a great practice run last night too, but we can send out that link for those that you would like to share this with. And I also want to thank most of all, and she is not on the screen right now, but Carolyn Rivers. She is the founder of the Sophia Institute and our president. She's the one who has been directing behind the scenes and putting us all in the position to share with all of you. So thank you to Carolyn, and hope you are feeling better. And we thank you for entrusting us to get this right and put it together so that we could all learn from it. So I think I've covered most of that. Is there another slide that I have? And I think Audrey made the good suggestion. If there's any other people on the line right now, whether it's the panelists, Courtenay, Maya, Lavonda, Audrey, anything I may have forgotten that we want to share with the audience, since we have, most of our audience, I just want to thank all of you, have stayed through the entire presentation, and we look forward to your ongoing support and following what we're doing next, particularly our next Living Your Truth talk, which will be in a couple of months.
Dwayne, this is Sandy Morkel, and I'd like to just encourage everyone to support the Social Justice Racial Equity Collaborative. There's a link on the Social Justice Racial Equity Collaborative website that they can donate. We're going to be doing some amazing things with the work of Dr. Christopher and racial healing as part of our Truth, Racial Healing and Transformation. That is the perfect way for us to be able to take the next steps. So if you'd like to be able to be part of that, please go to our website and donate. We have a 365 campaign right now. So for $1 a day, $365 a year over a 3-year period, you can really make a significant contribution to the work. But really any level of donation is welcome, and we encourage that. Thank you.
And before I forget, I also want to put in a plug once more for Origin Hungry. That was a very good book. I read it. I thought it was very instructive, and so many of what the lessons that Maya and Courtenay were talking to us about are reflected in that book. And you also have the ability to follow Courtenay and Maya and email them if you have any other questions or comments or any kind of feedback. I know they'd be happy to hear and read it. And also follow us on Facebook. You'll see it on your screen right now. Facebook, the SJREC Collaborative. That way you can keep in contact with us. And again, if you'd like to get a recording of this program, we can get that link to you as well. So I think we have 4 minutes left to spare. And again, I just want to tell everyone to be safe, wear a mask. Hopefully that's not too political. Keep yourselves safe, because South Carolina is going through a lot, but these are difficult times, and we're really fortunate to have young leaders like Courtenay and Maya to help the next generation do a little better than we have with keeping us safe and things like that. All right, so if that's it, I believe that should be the end of our program. Any other things that anyone else would like to bring up before we say goodbye? All right, well, thank everyone for participating. Thank most of all Maya and Courtenay and Lavonda. And with that, I believe that we are adjourned. Thanks so much. Stay safe. All right.
Great job, everyone.
With 4 minutes to spare, we got it all in.